Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. It is Megan, and today I'm going to be doing my Owl's Magical Readathon wrap-up. So for the Owl's Magical Readathon, I decided to do the Hogwarts Professor Career in the Care of Magical Creatures profession, and for this I chose 7 different prompts, 2 of which had to be the subject that you were trying to teach, and the other had to be Defense Against the Dark Arts. And then the other 5 were any of your choosing from the rest of the prompts. So because my original goal was to be a magizoologist, I went ahead and chose those 3 prompts, which were charms, herbology, and potions. And then I added on Muggle studies and history of magic because I felt like those 2 would be good for the Hogwarts Professor Career. And I ended up doing the other 5 as well, just for funsies. So because I was in Care of Magical Creatures, I chose the book The House of the Scorpion by Nancy Farmer. The prompt was to choose a book with a land animal on the cover, and I didn't have any, so I guess I went with the scorpion. I don't know if that counts as a land animal, but we're gonna count it. I enjoyed this book quite a lot. I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. It tells the story of a boy who was made to be a clone for a opium leader and what it means to be a clone and everything about that journey. I'm probably not going to be keeping it, but I do think I will pick up the sequel. It's called The Lord of Opium, and I don't want to give away why it's called that, but yeah. Then for Defense Against the Dark Arts, we studied the spell Reducto, and for this you had to choose a book that starts with R. I chose Ready or Not by Meg Cabot because it was the only book with R in the title that I own. So I chose this. I ended up giving it a 1 star. I really did not like it. It tells the story of a girl who is dating the president's son, and they are discovering whether they are ready or not for the next step in their relationship. I really didn't enjoy the plot. I really didn't enjoy the main character. Her sister was pretty fun, and there was one other character that was okay, but other than that, it just really wasn't a good book to me. It's not my personal preference, especially the writing style. It's just not my cup of tea. It was very repetitive and amateurish in my opinion, but I am 23, so I'm sure I would have loved it when I was in high school, but it's just not my cup of tea now. And for charms, we studied the age line, and for this you had to read a book that was an adult work. I chose All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. This is an adult work even though it's about young adults. It tells the story of a girl and a boy, and it tells their life from when they're really young to when they're teenagers, like young adults age, and it tells their perspectives from differing sides of the war. The boy is part of the Nazi army and the girl is a refugee or trying to hide, but she is blind. So it was a really cool story. I really enjoyed the different perspectives and challenging what means good and what means bad. I really enjoy books with those kind of gray lines. And because the girl was blind, I ended up reading some of the other characters I was reading other books in as blind. So for example, in Throne of Glass, I was picturing Selena being blind, and it was just crazy trying to imagine her being in the assassin competition blind. So that was an interesting perspective. It's always interesting to get takes on different characteristics, and this is the first I've read of someone being blind, unless you count Isaac in Fault in Our Stars. But this really told the book from her perspective, so that was really cool. It wasn't quite the ending I would have liked, but I still really enjoyed the book. I think I'm going to give it 3 stars. Then for herbology, you had to choose a book with a plant on the cover. And I don't own any books with plants on the cover, so I chose The Time Traveler's Wife because there's grass in the background. I have a lot of feelings about this book, and not many of them are good. There was the concept is really cool with like time travel and everything, but the execution, and every time he time travels he's naked, and him talking as a 40-year-old naked man to a 6-year-old and it just being played off as okay. It's just kind of odd to me. Definitely not my favorite kind of book, but it was written really well and I was interested to see what happened next. There was just a lot of confusion because it jumped back and forth so much, and it was hard to keep track of what was going on with who and what age and where and when and everything like that. So I gave it 2 stars. Then for potions, I read Godsgrave. You had to read a book that was the next ingredient in the potion, or as we call it, a sequel in the series. This is the sequel to Nevernight, and it is by Jay Kristoff. Nevernight tells the story of Mia, who is seeking revenge because her father was killed in front of her, so she goes to a school for assassins, and Godsgrave just continues her story. It definitely had an ending that I was not ready for. I kind of thought it was going to happen in Nevernight, and then it happened in here, so that was nice to see how it is playing out. But it's really cool. It was a really good book, and I cannot wait for Dark Dawn. But because it took me 200 pages to kind of get really into it, I am going to knock off 1 star, so I'm going to give it 4 stars. Then for Muggle Studies, you had to read a contemporary work. For this, I chose The Carrie Diaries by Candace Bushnell. This is the prequel to Sex and the City, and it tells the story of Carrie, who is in high school, and she's trying to decide what to do with her life. She really wants to be a journalist, so she's going through that. But there are quite a few toxic relationships in here between her friends and her boyfriend, and they're never really challenged or told that they're wrong, so I'm giving this 2 stars. And the last of my required texts was History of Magic, and for this you had to read a book that was published 10 or more years ago. I chose Into Thin Air by Jon Krakauer. This tells the story of the Mount Everest disaster of 1996. I really enjoyed the true adventure story aspect of it, and it was written really well, but it's just not one of my favorites, so I'm going to give it 3 stars. Then there were 5 extra prompts that you could choose to read whether or not you really wanted to once you finished your required texts. And the other 5 prompts were arithmancy, ancient runes, transfiguration, astronomy, and divination. So for ancient runes, you had to read a retelling of some kind of fairy tale or anything like that. I chose Mirror Mirror by Gregory Maguire, which is supposed to be a retelling of Snow White, and I really did not enjoy reading this. I just found it really quite boring, and a lot of the text was just so excessive and unnecessary and detailed that it was hard to keep track of what was going on. And yeah, I really can't find anything that I enjoyed about it. Even the prince at the end was kind of weird. I didn't enjoy who she ended up with. It was just not for me. It was just not my kind of book, which makes me sad because he is the author of Wicked, and I was really interested in reading Wicked, and I've heard that they're very similar, so let me know if you think I should still give Wicked a chance and if they really are similar or not. But this one definitely wasn't for me. And next for arithmancy, you had to read a book by more than one author. For this, I chose Before Marilyn by Astrid, Franse, and Michelle Morgan. And this tells the story of Marilyn when she first started out at the Blue Book Agency as a model, and her development as a model and then into an actress. It focused heavily near the end on the Blue Book Agency rather than Marilyn, and because it's supposed to be about Marilyn, I don't know how I feel about that, but it did give a lot of details that I never knew about Marilyn, so that was enjoyable. And I really loved some of the pictures of her. Like, there's some in here that make me feel like, wow, we kind of look alike, and I don't know, like, this is her before she became, like, iconic, and it makes me happy to see that one of the people that I really look up to is relatable. Then for astronomy, you had to read a book with star in the title. For this, I doubled up on my Endgame Readathon and the Owl's Magical Readathon and read The Fault in Our Stars by John Green. I gave this 3 stars. It was enjoyable, but it's just not something I love or really, like, am infatuated with, and it was just a good and fun read. It tells the story of Hazel Grace Lancaster, who has cancer, and she meets August, and they fall in love, and their story through that. And honestly, I just love some of John Green's other work more, so this sits out of 3 stars for me. Then for divination, you had to read a book set in the future. I chose Dragon Ball Volume 1, The Monkey King, and I don't know if this is actually set in the future, but it feels like it could be, so I went with that. I'm gonna give it probably 3 stars. It was enjoyable. Definitely was not what I was expecting. I don't know if I'd read it if it wasn't like Anthony's favorite thing, but it was enjoyable for my first manga. And I do think I'll be picking up other manga, so let me know in the comments down below what other manga you think I should pick up. I've heard of Orange being a really good one, but I don't know what other ones are really good to pick up. And the last book I read for the Harry Potter Owl's Magical Readathon is Crown of Feathers. This follows the prompt of Transfiguration, which is a book with a red cover or sprayed edges. And this book was my favorite of the whole readathon. I gave it 5 stars. It tells the story of Veronica, who wants to be a Phoenix Writer, and the school that teaches the Phoenix Writers how to be Phoenix Writers is only taking boys, so she decides to become a boy and join the school and her journey through that. And I just really loved it. I can see why Al Crate picked it, and it was just wonderful. So yes. Well, I had so much fun on the Owl's Magical Readathon. I definitely wish I had a working time turner because it would have helped this month. Honestly, this was just so much fun. I can't wait for the Newts in the fall and the Owls next year again. So that was my Owl's Magical Readathon. Let me know how yours went, and I will check in with you guys in my next video. Bye!